Okay, so I hope you see the screen right now, at least. Yes, so this is the second module of GoodWe Plus, and in this module we will look at our ET inverter and how to install it and how to commission it. This is our hybrid inverter for three-phase. The good thing is that if you're looking into installing, for example, any other three-phase inverters like the STT G2, then the steps that we go through here for this hybrid inverter are quite similar also for the PV inverters, only that you don't need to connect the battery, of course. Use a different app called SolarGo instead, but otherwise the steps are quite similar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please free to just post them in the Q&A section. And we'll also have a few questions during the webinar. And Lindeve and David and Eski and Eugenio, who are all here today, they will help in the background with the webinar. So short overview of the content. So first we'll check on how to connect inverters to do all the connections and the sort of the installation of the inverter. And then we will look on how to commission it. So how to connect with your app to the inverter and then set it up. And lastly, we will see how you can create one plant in SEMS portal and how then to set it up live. So before we start, there's some stuff that you need to have before you start to install the inverter. So please make sure that you have this. The first thing is to have the installation manual. Please, this comes with the package, but if not, you can also download it on our website. And if you have any issues or questions during the installation, everything is really stated in the installation manual. So make sure that you read it thoroughly. Moreover, we also have some apps. Let me get the laser pointer. No. There are some different apps from us at GoodWe. We have two different apps for the commissioning of the inverter called SolarGo and PV Master. And then we also have SEMS for monitoring the plant and also for the end user. These two are used for the commissioning, and I will talk more about them later. It's also good to have the proper tools that you need for the installation. We also recommend that you have some kind of multimeter and also with an AC clamp, and this helps you to measure the voltage and so on at the connection point to make sure that everything is connected correctly. And very important is also to wear personal protective equipment, so make sure that everything is safe during the installation. These are the different apps that we have. There are quite a lot of apps for only one installation, but to make it simple, these two are for the commissioning, the SolarGo and the PV Master, and the SEMS app is only for monitoring. You don't need to have the SEMS app. This is also available on the website or as a web browser version, but setting up the plant and adding the inverter is much easier on the app. And when you're already on site, then I would recommend to use the SEMS app as well. For this installation, we will use PV Master because this is for storage inverter. SolarGo are for PV grid-tied inverters only. So you need to make sure which inverter you have. If you have the STT G2, then use the SolarGo. If you have an ET or any other storage device, then it's the PV Master that you need to use. Also, before you start, please check the content of the package. In the quick guide or installation manual that comes with the inverter, there is a list of every component that should be in the box. Make sure that you have all of these components. In some cases, there are some, for example, for the XS and the MT inverter, there are some pins that are needed to be installed, otherwise the inverter won't start. And these pins, they're quite small, looks like a little Lego piece, and sometimes it's not checked and then the package is thrown away, and then at a later stage when the inverter doesn't start, then it's too late to recover these pieces. So make sure that you have everything you need in a package before you start installation. Some recommendations of where to place the inverters is, I mean, even though our inverter have IP65 rating, so you can install them both inside and outside, it is recommended to keep them away from direct sunlight and also keep them under some kind of cover to protect them against rain and snow. And this will then prolong the lifetime of the inverter as well. And if you have direct sunlight, it can heat up the inverter and then it will produce less energy. So just some kind of small protection is always good to have. Also, the direction that you can use for installing the inverter is depends a little bit on the models. So please read the manual before you do this. In most cases, you need to install them like standing up vertically on the wall. Do not tilt them in any way like this. In some cases, it is allowed to tilt them a little bit backwards, and then the maximum allowed tilt angle is 15 degrees backwards. This, as well as the minimum clearance distances, are very important because this is to assure that the cooling of the inverter is working properly. So please also check the manual for the clearance distances to the sides and to the top and bottom. This depends on the inverter model because some have the fans horizontally and some have it vertically. So please make sure that you have the correct clearance distances to also optimize the performance of the inverter and make sure that it works as it should. When installing the inverter, you start with the mounting plate. So all of our inverter comes with a mounting plate, and here they are a little bit different depending on the inverter model, but it's some kind of metal bracket with some holes. So you see here how you can use this as a template to drill the holes, and then afterwards you can make sure that it's fastened properly depending on the material of the wall behind. And something else that's good to mention before you start with installation is with the AC connection and the DC connection and so on, please make sure that you have the proper conductors that you use. In the manual, you will see the proper thickness of the conductors and how much you should strip them and so on for the installation to be proper. And this also depends on the different models too, so please make sure that you have the correct ones. It's also recommended to use AC breakers between the inverter and the grid connection. And here you need to size them properly. And we do recommend that you have 1.25 times the rated output current of the inverter. You also see the specifications in the user manual. So make sure that you check this as well. Before we start with the installation, I will see if Eski will come in here with a camera and then I can show you the inverter on the wall. But before that, I will just give you an overview of how the sort of typology of the inverter look like. They all look very much the same. All these are PV inverters only, but the same. We have the same design for all inverters. So here on the front, you have the display or like the user interface of the inverter with some LED lights and display for the PV inverters. And here you can track how the inverter is functioning. On the bottom side, you have all the connections. The only exception is for the empty inverter. Here you might need to open up this bottom plate here. Otherwise, there's no hatches or something that you need to open. It's all connections are on the bottom side. On the left side, could you join the meeting as well? So here on the left side, you have the LED status of the inverter. So here you can see what the LEDs on the front of the inverter means. If something is blinking and you don't know what it means, you can always check on the side of the inverter or the user manual to know what the issue or what this would mean. On the right side here, you have a sort of sticker with all the technical information, and here you also find the serial number and the check code. And these two are very important when you add the inverter to a plant in our monitoring portal. I also recommend that maybe take a picture of it and save it in case you need it in the future. So if something goes wrong, our service will also ask for the serial number of the inverter to help track it. This you will also find in the monitoring portal if you add it to this later on as well. Okay, it looks like we are not able to have any camera this session. So normally I would try to show the ET inverter that we have here behind us. But somehow the camera is not working today. So I will go through all the installation steps in this presentation instead. And if you have any questions, then you can always just ask them. Okay, so let's go continue. Yeah, if we look at the ET inverter, so this is how it looks like on the bottom side. We have two different inverters. We have one older model and one newer model. This is the newer model, and how you see it is on this communication terminal here. On the older one, the communication terminals are a little bit swapped and the cables go out from different places, but overall, the general setup is the same. It's not a big difference. But to go through the layout here on the bottom side of the inverter, if we start from the left, you see that we have the DC switch here, just an on and off. Then we have the PV inputs here with PV. This is the first MPPT and the second MPPT. On the European models, we only have one input per MPPT. So one of these will then be blocked. So you can only use one string input even in the second MPPT here. After that, we see the battery connection, also just plus and minus. Then here is one USB connection, and this is to connect any Wi-Fi or internet communication devices. If you have LAN or Wi-Fi or 4G, you connect it to this port here. I will go into this a bit more in detail later on, but in case you have the LAN version for the ET inverter, the LAN version that's compatible with ET is the 5-pin LAN dongle. And since this is a USB interface and the LAN dongle has a 5-pin interface, how to connect them is that you need to unscrew this plate here. So you have 4 screws on the bottom side. You unscrew this and then you can detach this plate and you can disconnect the cable, which is a 5-pin cable that goes into this plate here. And then this 5-pin cable, you can connect it then to the LAN dongle. This also works for 5-pin Wi-Fi dongles if you would have those as well. But otherwise, we usually use a USB Wi-Fi dongle. After that, here you see the communication terminal, and this one on the new one has 18 pins. And here, all communication over RS-485 and so on it goes through here. And the new ET inverter called the ET Plus that looks like this. It also has a drive switch, and this is basically 2 pins that goes out of the inverter, which you can activate on and off based on settings on inverters. You can set up that if it produces more than X amount of energy, please activate this switch. And then some, for example, heat pumps has a connection where you can connect the switch to, and then you can sort of activate and control some loads based on the PV production. After this here, you see a plate, and here you have 2 cables coming out, already pre-wired. The first cable here, it says meter. This is a meter that goes to our smart meter that you will need to install. And the second cable on the bottom side here is the BMS. So this goes to the battery for communication in interface with the battery. And lastly, you have the AC output. And if you join the first module that we had yesterday, you might remember that our hybrid inverters, they always have two AC outputs. And this is because one AC output goes to the normal grid connection, and the second AC output goes to the backup output. So this is where you then connect your backup loads, and therefore you have two different AC outputs. And it says on them, it says on grid and off, on grid and backup, so you will know which output is which. Okay, so before connecting the DC side of the inverter, it's very important that you make sure that the DC switch is turned off. Then observe the cable sizes according to the manual. And then please also connect the PE cable or the grounding to the outer case of the inverter before you do any more connections. We also have a few different how do you call it, like terminals for connectors for the PV strings, and it depends on the model and so on. So sometimes we provide these, sometimes we provide the MC4 series and so on, but they are all quite similar, and the guide on how to install them is also included in the quick guide or the installation manual. You've done this, you just start with connecting the DC cables. And as I said before, make sure that this switch is turned off, and then you just plug in the cables here. Make also sure that you measure so that you're sure that you've connected minus to minus and plus to plus to avoid any thing that could happen. Here you then, after that, after you attach the DC cables, you then attach the DC cables to the battery. And here again, please check the manuals for the proper conductor sizes. We now we have connected the DC side, we have connected the battery as well, and now it's time to connect the AC side. Before you connect anything on the AC side, please check the values at the grid connection point to make sure that you correct it to the correct phase and that the grid is working properly. Secondly, please install AC breakers on the AC side. So some kind of breakers before the grid connection, so that you can easily turn off and disconnect the inverter. And it's recommended to have it 1.25 the rated current of the inverter. Yes. So now everything is ready for the AC side, and then you just connect the AC cables here. In case you want to already, let's say you don't have the battery, but you already want to set up the possibility for the backup output for the future. Then I recommend that you already do the wiring, but then you can have one of these like switches, so you can then put over at the later stage, you can put over all the backups to the initial backup output. And for now, you can then connect all the backups to this one. In this way, you can already do all the wiring on site, and then at the later stage, when you connect the battery, you just need to turn the switch to sort of put over all the loads on the backup switch. Okay, so lastly, the communication, and here it's quite straightforward. You just plug in the USB device here. It looks like a little piece like this that you just need to plug in. This has a USB interface, as I said. In case you have a 5-pin connection for the ET series, that also works, but then you need to unscrew and dismount this base plate. Now I think we come to not the most difficult part, but the part where it sometimes can go wrong. And this is the connection of the smart meter. From the inverter side, the smart meter is already pre-wired, so you already have the cable going out here. And also on the smart meter that you get, it's also already pre-wired. So you just need, you see this contact here, this is an RJ45 contact, the same that you use for Ethernet. So you just plug this in and then the inverter and the smart meter will be connected. And yes, everything is already pre-configured and pre-set up on the smart meter, so you don't need to click on anything here or set up the smart meter in any kind of way. You just connect it and it should be done. This is now important to know where to place the smart meter. The smart meter itself can be, of course, be placed with the inverter in the AC box that you have, but the cables from the meter needs to be attached in the proper points in the installation. So here on the top side you have the current clamps, and these comes with the smart meter and they're already pre-wired, so you already know, you don't need to think about this too much. On the CT clamps you also have letters saying A, B and C. This stands for the different phases. So phase 1 is A, phase 2 is B, and phase 3 is C. Make sure that you connect them properly, and you see here the direction of the CTs. On the CTs, there's also an arrow saying house to grid, and this arrow should then point towards the grid from the house. Make sure that you install these CTs clamps just before the grid connection point, so just before the main house, main electricity meter. So not after and not before the loads here or anything like this. They should be just at the grid connection point, because these will measure the energy flow here. So in case you need to limit the export to the grid, then these are the sensors to know how much energy is flowing in and out to the grid. Likewise, on the bottom side here of the smart meter, you have 4 cables, and these are the voltage sense to check the voltage in the lines, and these also needs to be connected at the same point as the CTs. They should have the same voltage as the CTs, as the voltage where the CTs are measuring. Otherwise, you might get some different and weird values. In some cases, I've seen people connecting it on the other side of the loads here. So you have some load in between, but then you will have a voltage drop and the voltage that's read from the smart meter will not be true. So make sure that you connect them and these on the same, as close as possible to the CTs. And you see that you have 4 here, so 1 is also for neutral. I think there's 1, yeah, exactly, just before the meter, and connect just on the same side as the CTs. Here you see the directions of the CTs as well. So seen from the top side, this is the top of the inverter. So you see that the first one here, if we go from left to right, the first one goes to the inverter. This 1 plus and 1 minus. And then we start with the third phase, the second phase, and the first phase. So the first phase is all the way to the right. But the difference is that on the bottom side of it, the phases are reversed. So here you don't have the phase and the first phase on the right, but rather you have the first phase here just after the neutral. So make sure, this is also marked on the smart meter, so just double check that you connect the correct phase of this one here should then also be connected to the correct phase of the voltage here. It's also recommended to have some fuses here of 0.5 amps between the voltage to the grid and the meter. Yes, so check the voltage sense. Here you see that how they're ordered from left to right, and on the top they were ordered from right to left. Yes, this is the last thing, and this is the communication port for the RS485. This is actually not really necessary for the new ET Plus, and also not for the old one. The only way or only time you would need this actually is in case you want to parallel multiple ET inverters. In this case, you need a special box called the SCC1000S. And this box then comes with some cables that you can use to parallel the inverters. I can actually see if I can show it to you. So let me take away my background and show the box to you. So this is how the box looked like. Let me take this one. That's open. So it's a big box like this, and then on the inside here you connect the different inverters. So on the bottom side here you connect the inverters, and here you connect the CT clamp. So if you remember from yesterday, for this device here, you need to buy third-party CTs, and they need to be 5 amps on the secondary side. And those CT clamps or current transformers you connect here. On this side here, this is only for the voltage sense, and this is to connect to the grid directly. And to this box, if you have this box, you will get these like Y splitters with it. And these Y splitters are also already pre-wired. So you see here that you have 2 connections like this. And then you can connect this so this one goes to the inverter, and then this one will then go to the SCC1000, and this one goes to the next inverter, and so on. So basically, you daisy chain them in a loop like this. Yes. Here you see the connection. So here, this is on the SCC1000. How you connect it is 4 comms, and you connect it to COM 1, 2, and 3. And then you go into the Y connector like this, and then the other side goes to the inverter, and the second side goes connecting to the other inverter, and so on. And you can connect up to 10 inverters to one SCC1000S. Okay, so let's have our first quiz about the installation of the inverter. And if you have any questions, then feel free to write them in the Q&A section, and we'll try to answer them. I will see if I can also open the quiz. So Eski has posted in the chat, she has posted the Google form that you can use. Please fill in your email address here on the top so we can link who answered these questions to the correct person. So the first question is, how can you commission the ET inverter? So is it with the display, with the PV Master app, or with both of these? Maybe you also remember this from the presentation yesterday, that one set of our inverters, they do not come with a display. And where can you always get the complete manual? Yes, that should be clear. What is the maximum allowed tilt angle for the ET? 90 degrees backwards, 15 degrees backwards, 15 degrees forward, or none? What is important before connecting the DC cables? I hope this is also clear. Of what to do here. Where should the CTs be connected? This I stressed a lot, so I hope that everyone answered this, and please make sure that here it's seen from the inverter side. So if you're looking from the inverter, where they should be connected. And then also, where should the voltage sense be connected? I hope this is also clear. And then also, which way should the arrow of the CTs be facing when using the smart meter? Leave you one more minute to answer the questions, and then we will continue. We'll see if I can. Okay, we'll give you a little bit more time and then we'll continue with the commissioning of the inverter. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can join from the phone so that I can also show you the inverter, but the Zoom app is not really working. Let's continue like this anyways. I hope it will work anyhow. Okay, if you don't have had time to answer all the questions, don't worry. You can still fill out the Google form later on and submit it. But now let's talk about how to commission the inverter. So hopefully you now have installed the inverter. It should be connected properly in all kinds of way. And now you need to commission the inverter. So how to do this is either by Wi-Fi or by Bluetooth stick if you get this with inverter. If you have an ET inverter, you should get like a Bluetooth stick with inverter. And I do recommend that you first connect the Bluetooth stick because with this one, you can update the firmware to the latest firmware in case it's needed. If you connect with Bluetooth, I will show you how to do this later on. But how to do is you just connect this on the bottom side where you have the USB interface, and then you open the PV Master app. You press on Connect Device, and then you should probably find you choose Bluetooth, and then you should find the device in this list. It's quite straightforward. But with the Wi-Fi, if you connect over the Wi-Fi, you need to connect the Wi-Fi dongle. Then in this case, you need to enter the phone's Wi-Fi settings and search for the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi should then be called something called solar Wi-Fi with this last digits of the serial number of the inverter. And then you click on it and to connect to the inverter's Wi-Fi. And the standard passcode is then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when you then have connected to the Wi-Fi, then you can open the PV Master app, and then you should then see the inverter in the list here with the Wi-Fi name of the inverter. And then you click on this. This will then connect you to the inverter's sort of setup interface. And the PV Master looks like this. So the first page you get to is the overview page here. And here you have a display of the energy flow. And this is real time. So here you can actually see how much the PV is producing, the battery and the loads in the house, and how much is being exported to the grid. And this can also be used to sort of verify that you have installed it correctly. So if, for example, you put the CTs in the wrong direction, then here you might see that you're importing or exporting from the grid when you actually should do the opposite. After that, here you see a sort of overview of this current setup of the inverter. And here on the bottom side, you have the different menus. The first menu you have is overview. This is this page here. The second one is parameters, and here you can see detailed parameters of the inverter and what exact settings that you have had, and you can also then export these to like a PNG file or something like this that you then can send to the DNO if they require. Under parameters, you can also see alarms and error history of the inverter. But now to the fun part, and this is to commission the inverter. And for this, you need to press on settings. This is used to commission the inverter and also to set up all kind of battery settings and also the settings for the smart meter. If we click now on settings, you will see this menu here. And here you see a lot of different menu options. The only thing you need to actually have the inverter up and running is to click on basic settings. When you click on basic settings, the inverter will guide you through the whole commissioning setup phase. So it's very difficult to miss something. The other settings that you have here are in some cases good to set up as well. So for example, if you want to limit the export power to the grid, you need to set it up afterwards. Or if you have some specific battery settings, you can also set it up afterwards. But for the inverter to be up and running and producing energy, you only need to click on basic settings. If we now click here, the first screen you will see is for you to select your country code. And this is the safety settings of your specific country. So please here try to find the correct settings in the list. If you do not find it here, so maybe you live in or you install it in a small country where we don't have the specific grid settings, then you always have the possibility to click on other, and then there's an option for 50 and 60 hertz standard. And then you can choose this, and afterwards you can set up the grid settings manually. But say, for example, now that we are in Germany, where I am right now, then we select Germany here and click on next. This will then take you to selecting the operation mode. And here you have 4 different modes. One general mode, which is the most common one, and then this is not to be used. This is a kind of special setup for very specific countries, but I do not recommend to use this one. This backup mode, this is also used in some special cases to make sure that the backup is working for some specific regions. But the most common one is this general mode here, and this will make the inverter to sort of automatically optimize the energy flow for self-consumption. So this is what in most cases is used. Another possibility would be to set up eco mode. This is for economical mode, and here you can set up specific time schedules of when to sort of force charge or discharge the battery. And with this, you can, for example, link it so that you import energy during the nighttime when the prices are low, and then you export it at a certain time when you know that the prices will be high. And outside of all of this schedule, the inverter will operate in this general mode here. So mainly I would suggest use this one or maybe this one, depending on your preferences. The last thing is after you select this, you click on next, and then it will ask you to select your battery that you have. Here you just simply select your battery and press next, and that's it. In case you do not have any battery, you can also just press next or press default non-standard or no battery. I think there's an option for no battery as well, but it's not so important if you don't have a battery. And then after that, if you press next, you will also, one thing that's not shown here is it will take you to a slide showing a meter test. And this is a test that you can only do if you have a battery connected. And this will sort of help you a little bit with the installation to check if you have done it correctly. So basically to check if you installed the CTs and the meter correctly. So I recommend running this if you have a battery installed. Otherwise, you can just skip this and do it at a later stage as well. And when you're done with this, then the inverter will say everything is fine now, and then it will restart the inverter and all the new settings will then be applied. And this is everything you actually need to set up the inverter. So just click on basic setting and it guides you through the menu. In case you want to do some other settings and change something, then we also have the advanced settings here. It's not necessary, but it could be good to know what you can find here. First off here, we have the grid parameter settings. Let me show you this. In grid parameter settings, you can sort of set up the power limit in case you want to limit exported power. Then you tick this box here and you enter how much you want to have allowed to be exported to the grid. Here we also have, under that, we also have the unbalanced output function. You can tick this to sort of make the inverter to allow unbalanced output. Here you can also change the power factor, and here you can also customize the safety parameters. So as I said before, if you select the standard 50 Hertz and you need to set up the settings in a specific way as per what the DNO requests, then you click on this one and then you have all the custom parameters here and you can set them manually. The next here, if we go back, we have the backup supply. So in case you want to use the backup, you need to tick this bar here. This will activate the backup output of the inverter. Here we also have a shadow scan. This is to sort of, in case you have a lot of shadows on your PV modules, like thick shadows covering larger parts of your modules, then you can tick this box and this will sort of scan for the global maximum of the MPPT. And this could then increase the yield if you have very sharp shadows on your PV modules, but if you do not have it and it's only from clouds or such, then I recommend not using this to optimize the yield. Here you can select the COM address in case you use this SSC 1000 box that we had before. This one, in case you need to parallel the inverters, then you need to assign one COM address to each inverter. This is only to clear, to manually reset the inverter in case you have connected too much load to the backup and the inverter cannot handle it. Then in some cases you need to clear the log, the error log here. And the last thing here is the battery settings, and here this usually you don't need to fill out manually, because if in case you choose a battery from our list, all of this should be automatically. But if you have lead acid batteries, for example, then you could fill this out. Here you can activate custom levels of DoD. So if you want to reserve one part of the battery for the backup, for example, then you can set this up here. Something other that's good to know is to here update the Wi-Fi password of the inverter. To change the passwords, please click here, and then it will guide you through on how to update the password. The meter test that I told you about before is also possible to do afterwards, and you can just click here. Exactly, and then it guides you through. It uses the battery to discharge a little bit of power to then check how this changes the readings from the CTs. And here is to show you how to do the firmware upgrade with the Bluetooth module that comes with the inverter. So in case you do this is also recommended to do before you commission the inverter. So before you attach the Wi-Fi dongle, please attach the Bluetooth module. After you attached it, then you should just click here on connect device. You choose inverter with Bluetooth. And then you click I know here, which means continue. After that, you should find it here. You click on it, and this will then take you to the same interface as you saw before. If you then here see this yellow banner saying that it knows that a better or a newer firmware version is available, then it means that you can upgrade it. If you don't see any banner here, you do not need to upgrade the firmware, and you can continue with the commissioning instead. If you see this, then and you want to update the firmware, then you click on the banner, And this will then show you the current version, and then you can click here on upgrade. Current version and the version to be updated to. If you click on upgrade, it will download the firmware through your phone, mobile internet or Wi-Fi or however you are connected. Download it to your phone, and then it will upload it over the Bluetooth connection. It will then have some upgrading status here, but then when it says upgrade successfully, it mainly just means that you have downloaded this firmware properly, and it now starts to transfer it to the inverter. So here the screen will freeze, and the inverter will also freeze, and you won't be able to do anything with the device. But no need to panic, just wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then the inverter will physically reboot, and you will also be able to see that you can move your screen on the phone. And then this will confirm that the upgrade was successful. Okay, then let's have our second part of the quiz. I see there's one question here in the chat about connecting one battery that's not on our list. So as you heard before, we have on our website, we publish a list of approved batteries from our side. And these batteries, for all these batteries, we have a list on in our in the app when you commission, so you can choose these batteries. But we also have partnership with other battery manufacturers that we do not have a list. In these cases, these battery manufacturers, they do the compatibility check, and then they issue a statement, and they provide then how you set up our inverter with their battery. So then you need to contact them to set this up. If you want to use any other kind of battery that we do not have any collaboration with, I do not recommend this. This will also void the warranty. And this is to make sure that all batteries that we connect to the inverter will actually work. So this is also a safety, like a safety feature for you to know that whatever you connect to our inverter should work. So let's now start with the quiz. I will see if I can open the quiz. Here we have the quiz. So I will just fill something in. Don't look at these answers because they're wrong. Just to sort of read the questions to you. So for the second questionnaires is which app is to be used to commission the storage inverters? I hope you know which app it is right now. Otherwise, if you use the other app, it won't work. So this is very important. Second question is what is the default password to connect to the inverter hotspot, the Wi-Fi? This I also mentioned. And the last question is what is the default password to access the inverter settings as an installer? It was written on the slide, but I didn't mention this per se. So let me help you out here. In case you go into the app and you try to access the inverter settings, then if it asks you for a password, then the correct password for our hybrid inverters is GoodWe 2010. And if you enter this, you should be able to access all the settings. For the on-grid inverters, it's different. For the on-grid inverters, I think it's GoodWe 2018 instead. Okay, so I will give you another minute to answer these questions, and then I will show you how to connect it in the SEMS app. If you have any more questions, please post them in the Q&A section, and then we can help you answer this. Okay, I think I'm actually managed to connect with my phone as well. I'm not sure, or maybe not. Okay, but then let's start to show you. How to set it up in SEMS. I can maybe show you the inverter a little bit with a computer camera, so you see how it looks like. So now you should have then installed the inverter, you should have commissioned it properly, and the last thing you need to do now is to connect it to our SEMS portal. To connect it to our SEMS portal, just to give you a brief overview of what we talked about yesterday. So here we have the web version, and we have a web version and we have an app version. For the web version, this looks like this. So here you have an overview, and here you have all your plans. If you want to know more about this, there's also a demo version that you can, if you go to our SEMS portal website, you can just click on the demo version on the top right corner, and you can play around a little bit to see how it looks like. All of this I went through yesterday, so let's skip this and let's focus rather on the app. When you download the app, this is where I also recommend to add any plans. If you want to add this or add your installation and create the plans, you log in here with your installer account, the one you use to register for these webinars as well. After you log in, you come to this main page here. On the main page, you see exactly the same thing as on the web browser version, so to say. So here on the top, you have an overview of all your working devices and the one who could have some kind of fault or who are offline maybe. Then after that, you have a list here of all your different plants, and you have the capacity and total generation, for example. On the bottom side here, you have a little menu of different settings or information that you can see. If you, for example, press on Wi-Fi here, this or even before logging in Wi-Fi configuration here, this can also be used to set up the Wi-Fi communication between the inverter and the end user's local Wi-Fi connection point. If you press here or here, then it will guide you through on how to set this up. So also the SEMS apps is used for this Wi-Fi communication setup. Let's now say that you are at an end user, you have installed the device, you have commissioned the device, and now you want to add this to your portal or to your list here. Then you just press here on this plus on the top left corner. This is to add a new plant. This will take you to a screen with sort of a form that you need to fill out. You just enter all the fields. Here you enter the owner's email address in case it is an end user. The plant name, you select the address and also the classification. In this case, even if it's a residential solution, you should select, I think, energy storage or something like this, because it's an ET inverter. Here you put in the maximum capacity on the PV array and how many modules you have. And the last thing here, this is not really important. This is something called profit ratio. And this is only a scalar that's multiplied with the energy produced by the inverter. So in the section later on, it will show you income on this monitoring portal, but income actually only means this number here multiplied by how much the inverter has generated. You can also add a photo to your plant if you want, to the nice house or the roof or whatever. But the good thing here is that when you enter the end user's email account here, and you click submit, with filling out this, you will create the plant. You will also create a new user account in SEMS for the end user. And an email will be sent to the end user saying that account has been created and your login info is the initial password is GoodWe 2018 with the capital G. And it will link the owner's plant to your installer account as well. So this makes it very efficient to create it here with the app. After you click on submit, it will tell you this information that it has created a new end user account. Then you just click on submit. So now you have created your plant, but what you need to do now is you need to add the inverter to the specific plant you have created. It will ask if you want to add it immediately or if you want to add it later on, and then you can click here on add devices. When you want to add a device, you just click here. This will take you, it will open up your camera if you allow it, and it gives you 3 different inputs. The serial number to know which inverter it is, the check code to make sure that it's actually your inverter and that you have it, and the name is just to have some device name for you to recognize which one it is. It's also possible to scan the QR code on the side of the inverter. Let me show you here. This is not the XS inverter, but the smaller, this is not the ET inverter, I mean, this is the smaller XS. So this is how it looks like. And on the side of the inverter, I told you that you have the technical information. And on the bottom side here, you will have the serial number, and there you will also have a QR code. So you can scan the QR code here, and this will import the serial number and the check code automatically. So it helps you a little bit only with the commissioning or with the setup. Of course, you can enter it manually if you prefer, but to speed up the process, you can just scan the QR code. And then you click on add inverter, and that should be set. And now you have created your plant, you have added your inverter, you have created the user account, and you have linked all of this together. Now you can go on and click on the new plant you have, for example, and this will then show you the overall generation. It will show you here the latest power measurements. And you can also control here specific parameters, like, for example, if you want to set up this eco mode, the time of use, then you can set up the schedule also through the SEMS app. Yes. And now for our last quiz. Let me open up here. Okay, so here the question is, how can you connect plant to the free monitoring platform? And this is the first question, and I showed you one way, but I hope you also know that we have the web version if preferred. However, the app is quicker, I would say. What is the initial password created for the end user when setting up the account? I hope you remember this. And where can the check code of the inverter be found? So these are the 3 questions. I hope it's very clear. But apart from this, I will let you answer these questions, and if you have any more questions, please post them in the Q&A section in the Zoom application. So if you, instead of the chat, you have one section called Q&A, and there you can then post your questions and we can easier answer you. Otherwise, if you want to raise your hand or something like this, just feel free to ask any questions. I will stay on for another minute to see if you have any questions. Otherwise, I wish you a nice day and thank you for joining. Okay, I think all questions have been answered.
Yes, Steve, just one thing I'd like to add quickly. So for anyone who has not created an installer account yet, I think we can just send out a new link. Unfortunately, the link on our registration page has expired. I think that's the problem that someone is picking up. So we can just send them a new link, maybe in an email, to register an installer account.
Yes, sure. We will do that. Yes, we'll send out an email to everyone participating with a link so you can register a SEMS account. But also, this is the same account that you used also for the first module. So please make sure that you have created an account like this and you use the same email address as when you register for this webinar. This will help us link and to know who participated and so on. And if something is different than what you entered, then you can also send us an email. Okay, then I wish everybody a continuous nice day. And on Tuesday next week, David will have the last module of GoodWe Plus and talk about our service and technical support and the main issues that you might find during an installation or some things that could go wrong, and show you how you could solve this yourself. Okay, then thank you everybody and have a nice day. Bye bye.